The morning sun cast long shadows across the Afghan valley as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos checked her medical kit for the third time. Her calloused hands moved with practiced precision, ensuring every bandage, every syringe, every piece of life-saving equipment was exactly where it needed to be. The weight of responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders. But it was a burden she'd carried for 6 years as a combat medic with the 82nd Airborne Division. "Santos, you ready?" called Captain Jake Morrison from across the staging area. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd led men through hell and back. But Maria could hear the underlying tension that came before every dangerous mission. "Always ready, sir," she replied, slinging her pack over her shoulders. The familiar weight of her medical supplies, mixed with standard combat gear, felt like putting on an old, trusted jacket. Her M4 carbine hung at her side, a weapon she hoped she wouldn't need today but knew might mean the difference between bringing everyone home or leaving someone behind. Captain Morrison had been her company commander for 18 months, and in that time, Maria had seen him make decisions that saved lives and others that haunted him. He was the kind of leader who ate last, slept least, and carried the weight of every soldier under his command. Today's mission would test that leadership in ways none of them fully understood yet. The briefing tent buzzed with controlled energy as the assault team gathered around a detailed map of their target area. Intelligence reports indicated a high-value target was holed up in a compound roughly 12 kilometers from their forward operating base. The mission seemed straightforward on paper. But Maria had learned that nothing in Afghanistan was ever as simple as it appeared on a map. "Listen up," Captain Morrison began, his finger tracing their planned route. "We've got confirmed reports of Taliban leadership meeting in this compound. Our job is to capture or neutralize the target and gather any intelligence we can find. The compound sits in a valley with limited escape routes, which works in our favor. But it also means we'll be exposed during our approach." Sergeant First Class David Kim, the team's designated marksman, studied the terrain features with intense focus. "What about civilian presence, sir? Any reports of non-combatants in the area?" Quote, "Minimal civilian activity reported. But we follow standard rules of engagement. Positive identification required before engaging any target." Morrison's eyes swept across his team. "Santos, you'll be with the command element. Kim, you take overwatch from this ridge here." The rest of the team splits into 2 fire teams for the assault. Maria nodded, already visualizing potential casualty collection points and evacuation routes. In her experience, the most dangerous moments came when soldiers forgot that the enemy might not follow the same plan they'd rehearsed. She'd seen too many good soldiers wounded or killed because someone assumed the Taliban would react exactly as predicted. The helicopter ride to the insertion point passed in relative silence, each soldier lost in their own pre-mission rituals. Maria closed her eyes and ran through her emergency medical procedures, visualizing treating various types of wounds under fire. She'd performed these procedures dozens of times in training and unfortunately too many times in real combat situations. Each soldier she'd saved strengthened her resolve. But each one she'd lost became a weight she carried forever. The Black Hawk settled into a dusty landing zone just as the first light of dawn began painting the mountains in shades of gold and orange. The beauty of the Afghan landscape never failed to impress Maria, even as she remained acutely aware that danger could be hiding behind every rock and tree. The team moved out immediately, maintaining tactical spacing as they began their approach to the target compound. Captain Morrison led from the front, his movements confident but cautious. Maria stayed close enough to reach him quickly if needed, but far enough back to avoid clustering that might make them both targets. The terrain was exactly as described in the briefing. Rocky and unforgiving, with scattered vegetation that provided minimal concealment. 2 hours into their movement, Sergeant Kim's voice crackled through their radio headsets. "Command, this is Overwatch. I've got movement in the compound. Looks like 3, maybe 4 individuals moving between buildings. No weapons visible from my position. Copy that, Overwatch. Continue observation." Morrison held up a closed fist, signaling the team to halt while he processed the information. Maria used the pause to scan their surroundings, noting potential cover positions and calculating distances to various landmarks. Her medical training had taught her to always think 3 steps ahead, whether treating a wounded soldier or positioning herself for maximum effectiveness. The compound came into view as they crested a small ridge. It looked exactly like hundreds of others Maria had seen throughout her deployments, a collection of mud brick buildings surrounded by a low wall. What made this one different was the intelligence indicating it housed someone responsible for numerous attacks against coalition forces. Today, that intelligence would be put to the test. Morrison's hand signals directed the 2 fire teams to flanking positions while he and Maria moved toward what appeared to be the main entrance. The morning air was still cool, but Maria could already feel sweat forming under her body armor. Combat had a way of heightening every sensation, making soldiers acutely aware of things they might normally ignore. Santos, when we breach, you stay behind me until we've cleared the immediate area. Once we've established security, you can move forward to provide medical support if needed. Morrison's instructions were clear and professional, but Maria could hear the concern in his voice. He'd seen her treat wounded soldiers under fire before and knew she had a tendency to put her patients' welfare above her own safety. Understood, sir. I've got your back. Maria's response carried more meaning than just acknowledging orders. In the tight-knit world of combat units, soldiers developed bonds that went beyond friendship. They became family members willing to risk everything for each other, and Maria had proven herself worthy of that trust time and again. The breach happened faster than expected. Intelligence reports had suggested the compound might be lightly defended, but the reality proved much more dangerous. As the fire teams moved into position, automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple locations within the compound walls. The sharp crack of AK-47 rounds filled the air, punctuated by the deeper boom of what sounded like a heavy machine gun. Contact! Contact! Came the radio calls from both fire teams simultaneously. Maria watched as Morrison immediately shifted from cautious approach to aggressive assault, understanding that the only way through this situation was forward. The Taliban defenders had chosen their positions well, creating interlocking fields of fire that made advancement extremely difficult. Sergeant Kim's precise rifle fire began picking off exposed defenders, his shots echoing across the valley with deadly accuracy. Each round he fired was carefully aimed and deliberately placed, providing suppressive fire that allowed the fire teams to begin their advance. Maria could see Morrison calculating angles and distances, looking for weaknesses in the defensive position. Fire Team Alpha, move left. Fire Team Bravo, suppress that heavy gun position. Morrison's commands cut through the chaos with calm authority. Maria positioned herself behind substantial cover, ready to move forward when needed, but understanding that getting herself killed would help no one. The assault developed into a deadly dance of movement and suppressive fire. Coalition forces advanced by bounds, with one element providing cover while another moved forward. The Taliban defenders fought with desperate determination, knowing that capture likely meant death and that retreat might not be possible. Maria watched Morrison coordinate the attack with the skill that had made him one of the most respected company commanders in the battalion. His tactical decisions were sound, his commands clear, and his personal example inspiring. She'd seen him lead from the front in previous engagements, always willing to share the risks he asked his soldiers to take. The heavy machine gun position proved to be the key terrain feature. Located in a fortified position near the compound's center, it commanded excellent fields of fire and was hampering the advance of both fire teams. Morrison studied the situation for several moments before making a decision that would change everything. Overwatch, this is command. Can you neutralize that heavy gun position? Kim's response came back immediately. Negative, sir. I can't get a clear shot from this angle. The position is too well protected. Morrison looked at the tactical situation developing around them. His fire teams were pinned down, taking sporadic casualties that would soon require medical attention. The mission was stalling, and every minute they remained exposed increased the likelihood of more serious problems. Sometimes leadership meant making decisions that carried personal risk, but served the greater good. Santos, I'm going to move forward and mark that position with a grenade. Once I neutralize it, the fire teams can advance and complete the assault. Morrison began checking his equipment, preparing for what both soldiers knew was an extremely dangerous maneuver. Sir. That position is heavily defended. Let me go with you. If you get hit, you'll need immediate medical attention. Maria's offer was both professional and personal. She'd lost too many good soldiers to preventable deaths, situations where quick medical intervention might have made the difference. Morrison considered her suggestion for a moment before shaking his head. I need you here to coordinate medical support for the fire teams. If this goes wrong, they're going to need you more than I will. Before Maria could argue further, Morrison was moving. His advance toward the heavy gun position was a masterclass in battlefield tactics. Using every bit of available cover while maintaining momentum, Maria watched through her rifle scope, ready to provide covering fire if needed, her heart pounding with the knowledge that she was watching someone she respected put his life on the line for his soldiers. The distance Morrison had to cover seemed impossibly long, every meter a potential killing ground. The Taliban defenders quickly identified him as a threat and concentrated their fire accordingly. Bullets sparked off rocks and kicked up dust clouds around him as he bounded from cover to cover, each movement bringing him closer to his objective. Maria found herself holding her breath as Morrison made his final approach to the heavy gun position. She could see him preparing a fragmentation grenade, calculating the timing and trajectory needed to neutralize the threat. Everything seemed to slow down in those crucial seconds, the entire battle condensing into one critical moment. The grenade left Morrison's hand in a perfect arc, disappearing into the fortified position just as planned. The explosion that followed was immediate and devastating, silencing the heavy machine gun that had been dominating the battlefield. For a moment, Maria thought the maneuver had succeeded perfectly. Then she saw Morrison stumble and fall. The sniper's bullet had come from an unexpected angle, catching Morrison just as he turned to signal the fire teams forward. Maria watched in horror as her company commander collapsed behind minimal cover, clearly wounded and unable to move under his own power. The tactical situation that had seemed to be turning in their favor suddenly became desperate. Man down! Man down! Maria's voice carried across the battlefield as she prepared to do what she'd trained for her entire career. The distance between her position and Morrison's location was roughly 50 meters of open ground, all of it covered by enemy fire. Getting to him would require crossing a killing field that had already claimed one casualty. But Maria Santos hadn't spent 6 years as a combat medic to hide behind cover when soldiers needed her help. She'd taken an oath to preserve life, and that oath didn't include exceptions for dangerous tactical situations. As she prepared to leave her covered position, she knew that the next few minutes would test every skill she'd learned and every bit of courage she possessed. The battlefield seemed to pause for a moment, as if the universe itself was taking a breath before the next phase of the engagement began. Maria checked her medical kit one final time, ensuring she had everything needed to treat whatever injuries Morrison had sustained. Her M4 carbine felt heavier than usual, but she knew that reaching him alive meant being ready to fight as well as heal. Time was running out, and every second of delay increased the likelihood that Captain Morrison would become another casualty of war. Maria had seen too many good soldiers die because help arrived too late, and she was determined not to let that happen today. The mission was far from over, but her immediate focus had shifted from supporting the assault to saving the life of a leader her entire team depended on. Taking a deep breath, Maria prepared to leave the safety of her covered position and venture into the most dangerous 50 meters of her military career. Maria Santos didn't hesitate. The moment she saw Captain Morrison fall, every instinct developed through 6 years of combat medicine kicked into overdrive. Fear existed somewhere in the back of her mind, but training and determination pushed it aside as she calculated the fastest route to reach her wounded commander. 50 meters of open ground lay between them. 50 meters that enemy fighters were already targeting with renewed intensity. "Covering fire! Covering fire!" Maria shouted into her radio as she prepared to leave her position. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Both fire teams and Sergeant Kim from his overwatch position began pouring suppressive fire into known and suspected enemy positions. The sound was deafening, a continuous roar of automatic weapons and precise rifle shots designed to keep enemy heads down long enough for Maria to reach Morrison. She sprinted from her covered position with a burst of speed that surprised even her. The weight of her medical pack and combat gear seemed to disappear as adrenaline flooded her system. Behind her, She could hear the steady crack of friendly fire providing the suppression she desperately needed. Every step carried her closer to Morrison and deeper into the enemy's killing zone. The first enemy rounds began impacting around her when she was only 10 meters from her starting position. Bullets whined past her head and kicked up spurts of dirt at her feet. But Maria kept running. She'd learned early in her career that stopping in the middle of open ground was a guaranteed way to become a casualty. The only safety lay in reaching Morrison's position as quickly as possible. 20 meters. 30 meters. Each step felt like a victory against impossible odds. Maria could see Morrison more clearly now. And what she observed wasn't encouraging. He was conscious but clearly in significant pain, pressing one hand against his left shoulder where dark blood was seeping through his uniform. The sniper's bullet had found its mark, and from the amount of bleeding visible, it had likely hit something important. At 40 meters, a burst of automatic fire forced Maria to dive for cover behind a collection of rocks, barely large enough to shield her body. Enemy rounds sparked off the stone surfaces inches from her head, reminding her that this rescue attempt could easily turn into a double casualty situation. She could hear Morrison calling out to her, his voice strained but still carrying the authority of command. "Santos, stay back! It's too dangerous!" Morrison's words reached her clearly, despite the ongoing gunfire. Even wounded and bleeding, he was still thinking about the welfare of his soldiers. It was exactly the kind of selfless leadership that had earned him the respect and loyalty of everyone under his command. "Not a chance, sir," Maria shouted back, checking her equipment and preparing for the final sprint to his position. "I've come too far to quit now." The last 10 meters required every bit of courage Maria possessed. She broke cover with another burst of speed, knowing that hesitation at this point would be fatal. Enemy fire intensified as the Taliban fighters realized what she was attempting. But the covering fire from her teammates was equally fierce. The air around her filled with the deadly whisper of passing bullets and the sharp crack of near misses. She slid into Morrison's position like a baseball player stealing home base, her body armor scraping against the rocky ground as she sought whatever protection the terrain offered. The captain's makeshift cover was minimal at best, barely sufficient to shield one person from enemy fire, let alone two. Maria immediately began assessing his injuries while keeping her profile as low as possible. "Where are you hit, sir?" Maria's hands were already moving over Morrison's body, checking for wounds and evaluating the severity of his injuries. Her training had taught her to work quickly and systematically, gathering information that would determine her treatment priorities. "Left shoulder, through and through, I think," Morrison replied, through gritted teeth. "Hit me just as I was turning to signal the advance. Damn sniper had me zeroed in perfectly." Maria's examination confirmed Morrison's assessment, but revealed additional complications. The bullet had entered through the front of his shoulder and exited through the back, creating two wounds that needed immediate attention. More concerning was the location of the entry wound, which suggested possible damage to major blood vessels or lung tissue. The steady bleeding wasn't immediately life-threatening, but it would become serious if not controlled quickly. "I need to get you out of here, sir," Maria said while applying pressure bandages to both wounds. Her movements were swift and professional, muscle memory taking over as she worked to stabilize Morrison's condition. "This position is too exposed for proper medical treatment." Morrison tried to shake his head but winced as the movement aggravated his injury. "Negative, Santos. The mission isn't complete. The fire teams are still pinned down, and we haven't secured our objective. I won't abandon them to save myself." Maria had expected this response. Morrison's unwillingness to leave the battlefield while his soldiers were still in danger was both admirable and frustrating. She understood his sense of responsibility, but she also knew that command decisions needed to be made by someone not dealing with significant blood loss and pain from a gunshot wound. "Sir, with respect, you're not going to be making any tactical decisions until we get this bleeding stopped and get you to a safer position," Maria replied, while continuing her medical treatment. "The fire teams are good soldiers. They know their jobs, and they'll complete the mission." The tactical situation around them continued to develop as Maria worked. She could hear radio communications from both fire teams reporting their positions and status. Without Morrison's direct leadership, the non-commissioned officers were stepping up to fill the gap, but the assault had clearly lost momentum. The Taliban defenders were taking advantage of the confusion to reorganize their own defensive positions. Santos command. What's Morrison's status? The voice belonged to Sergeant First Class Kim, who was maintaining his overwatch position while simultaneously trying to coordinate the overall battle. He's stable for now, but I need to move him to a safer location for proper treatment, Maria replied while applying additional bandages to Morrison's wounds. The bleeding is controlled, but he needs evacuation as soon as possible. Copy that. Fire Team Alpha reports they've identified a possible route to the compound's rear entrance. Fire Team Bravo is maintaining suppression on known enemy positions. We're going to need command guidance on how to proceed. Maria looked at Morrison, whose face was pale but determined. She could see him processing the tactical information and formulating plans despite his injuries. The man's dedication to his soldiers and his mission was unquestionable, but his current physical condition made effective leadership nearly impossible. Kim. This is Morrison, the captain said, keying his radio with his uninjured arm. Continue the assault as planned. Alpha Team takes the rear entrance. Bravo provides support. I'll coordinate from my current position. Maria shook her head firmly. Sir, you're not coordinating anything from this position. You're losing too much blood. And this location is completely exposed to enemy fire. We need to move now. Before Morrison could argue further, a burst of automatic weapons fire raked their position, forcing both soldiers to press themselves even flatter against the ground. Rock fragments and dust filled the air around them as bullets impacted just inches from their bodies. The message was clear. Staying in their current location was not a sustainable option. All right, Santos, Morrison conceded reluctantly. But we're not leaving the battlefield. Find us a position where I can continue to command and you can provide proper medical treatment. Maria had already identified their destination during her initial sprint to reach Morrison. Approximately 30 meters to their right was a small depression in the ground, possibly created by a previous explosion or natural erosion. It offered significantly better protection than their current location, while still allowing visual and radio contact with the assault teams. That depression over there, sir. It's not perfect, but it's better than this. Maria pointed toward their objective, while keeping her body low, to avoid presenting a target to enemy shooters. I'm going to help you move, and we're going to do it quickly. Moving a wounded soldier across open ground under enemy fire required careful planning and flawless execution. Maria positioned herself on Morrison's uninjured side, allowing her to support his weight while keeping her weapon ready if needed. The distance wasn't far, but it would feel like miles while enemy bullets were seeking them out. On 3, sir. 1, 2, 3. Maria and Morrison rose together, the medic supporting most of the captain's weight as they stumbled and ran toward better cover. The movement immediately attracted enemy attention, and the air around them filled with the angry buzz of passing rounds. Morrison's legs were unsteady, partly from blood loss and partly from the shock of his injury, but he managed to keep moving with Maria's support. She could feel his weight increasing against her shoulder as they covered the distance, his strength clearly fading despite his determination to continue functioning. They reached the depression just as Morrison's legs gave out completely. Maria controlled his fall as much as possible, easing him into the protected position while scanning for immediate threats. The new location was significantly better than their previous spot, offering protection from multiple angles while maintaining good visibility of the ongoing battle. How are you feeling, sir? Maria immediately resumed her medical assessment, checking Morrison's vital signs and evaluating the effectiveness of her earlier treatment. His pulse was elevated but strong, and the bleeding from both wounds appeared to be well controlled by her bandages. Like I've been shot, Morrison replied with a weak smile. But I've felt worse. What's our tactical situation? Maria could see that Morrison's primary concern remained his soldiers and their mission, even as his own condition continued to deteriorate. She understood this dedication because she'd seen it in every good leader she'd served under. But it also meant she would need to be more assertive about his medical needs. The assault is continuing, sir, but the teams need guidance. From what I can observe, they're making progress, but they're being cautious without direct leadership. Maria keyed her radio while keeping pressure on Morrison's shoulder wound. All stations. This is Santos. Command is displaced, but operational. Stand by for further orders. Morrison tried to sit up to better observe the battle, but Maria gently pushed him back down. Sir, you need to conserve your strength. I can relay your orders, but you need to stay still and let me work. For the next 20 minutes, Maria found herself serving simultaneously as combat medic and communications relay. Morrison continued to provide tactical guidance to his fire teams, but his orders came through Maria's radio. She could see his strength steadily declining despite her medical interventions, and she knew that time was becoming a critical factor. Fire Team Alpha reports they've breached the rear entrance, Maria relayed to Morrison. They're encountering light resistance and are advancing through the compound. Fire Team Bravo is maintaining overwatch and suppressing any attempts to reinforce the defensive positions. Morrison nodded weakly, his face showing the strain of maintaining command while dealing with significant pain and blood loss. Good. Tell Alpha to secure the main building and look for intelligence materials. Bravo needs to watch for escaping personnel. As Maria transmitted these orders, she could see Morrison's condition continuing to worsen. His skin was becoming pale and clammy, clear signs that shock was beginning to set in despite her treatment efforts. The wounds themselves were stable, but the cumulative effects of the injury and blood loss were taking their toll. Sir, I need to start an IV and get some fluid into you, Maria said while preparing her medical equipment. Your body is starting to show signs of shock, and we need to address that before it becomes life-threatening. Morrison's response was slower than usual, another indication that his condition was deteriorating. Do what you need to do, Santos. But keep monitoring the radio. My soldiers need guidance until this mission is complete. Maria worked quickly to establish intravenous access, her hands steady despite the ongoing combat around them. She'd performed this procedure dozens of times under similar conditions, and muscle memory guided her movements even as she continued to monitor the tactical situation. All stations, this is Overwatch. Kim's voice crackled through the radio. I've got movement on the eastern wall. Looks like several individuals attempting to escape through a concealed exit. Fire Team Bravo, can you intercept? Bravo copies, came the immediate response. We're moving to intercept. Maintain eyes on the target. Maria could see Morrison trying to track the developing situation, his military instincts still functioning despite his physical condition. She knew that his greatest fear wasn't his own injury but the possibility that his soldiers might be wounded or killed while he was unable to directly lead them. Alpha reports the main building is secure, Maria announced after receiving another radio transmission. They've found several intelligence materials and are conducting a detailed search. No additional enemy contact inside the compound. This news seemed to provide Morrison with a surge of energy, and Maria could see some of the tension leave his face. The mission was succeeding despite the complications caused by his injury. Proof that his leadership had prepared his soldiers to function effectively, even without his direct presence. Outstanding, Morrison said, his voice stronger than it had been in several minutes. Tell Alpha to expedite their search. We need to be ready to extract as soon as possible. As Maria transmitted these orders, she realized that Morrison's condition had stabilized somewhat with the IV fluids and her continued medical treatment. He was far from completely healthy, but he was no longer in immediate danger of losing consciousness or going into severe shock. Bravo reports 3 enemy personnel captured during attempted escape, came another radio update. All individuals are secured and ready for transport. The compound appears to be completely under our control. Morrison actually smiled at this news. The first genuine expression of satisfaction Maria had seen from him since he'd been wounded. Excellent work. Tell both teams to prepare for extraction. We've accomplished our mission. As the immediate tactical situation resolved itself, Maria found herself able to focus more completely on Morrison's medical needs. She redressed his wounds with fresh bandages and checked his vital signs again, pleased to find that everything was trending in the right direction. You're going to be fine, sir, Maria assured him while organizing her medical equipment. The wounds are clean, the bleeding is controlled, and your vital signs are stable. You'll be back to annoying your soldiers in a few weeks. Morrison chuckled weakly at her comment. Santos, I want you to know that what you did today was extraordinary. Running across open ground under fire to reach me was beyond the call of duty. Maria shook her head dismissively. Just doing my job, sir. Besides, someone had to make sure you didn't bleed out before you could finish yelling at the fire teams. Before Morrison could respond, Kim's voice came through the radio with new urgency. All stations, this is Overwatch. I've got multiple vehicles approaching from the north. Looks like enemy reinforcements, approximately 2 kilometers out and closing fast. The tactical situation had suddenly changed again, and Maria could see Morrison's mind immediately shift back to operational concerns. The mission might be complete, but getting his soldiers safely off the battlefield was still his responsibility. Unfortunately, his physical condition made direct leadership extremely difficult. How many vehicles, Kim? Morrison asked through Maria's radio. I count 4, possibly 5 vehicles. Could be anywhere from 20 to 40 personnel. They'll be here in less than 10 minutes at current speed. Maria could see Morrison calculating options and timelines in his head, trying to determine the best course of action for extracting his teams before enemy reinforcements arrived. She knew he was right to be concerned. Even a successful mission could turn into a disaster if they were caught by superior numbers during their withdrawal. Santos, Morrison said quietly, I need you to do something for me. Something that goes beyond medical treatment. Maria looked at him carefully, seeing something in his expression that she hadn't noticed before. There was determination there, but also resignation, as if he were preparing to make a decision that would be personally difficult but operationally necessary. What do you need, sir? Morrison pointed toward his M4 carbine, which lay on the ground nearby where Maria had placed it during his medical treatment. I need you to take command of this operation and get our people home safely. Maria Santos stared at Captain Morrison's M4 carbine, understanding immediately what he was asking of her. The weight of command had never been something she'd actively sought, but the tactical situation demanded someone step up to lead the extraction before enemy reinforcements arrived. Morrison's physical condition made it impossible for him to effectively coordinate the complex maneuvers required to get everyone home safely. Sir, I'm a combat medic, not an infantry officer, Maria said, though she was already reaching for the weapon. I don't have the training or experience to command an operation like this. Honor, Morrison's eyes met hers with complete confidence. Santos, you've been watching me lead for 18 months. You understand tactics better than you realize, and more importantly, you understand these soldiers. They trust you. And right now, that's more valuable than any advanced military training. Maria picked up the M4, feeling the familiar weight of the weapon in her hands. She'd qualified expert with the carbine multiple times and had used it in combat situations, but always as a medic, providing security for herself and her patients. Using it as a company commander's weapon carried entirely different responsibilities and expectations. What about Sergeant Kim? He's got more rank and more infantry experience, Maria suggested, though she was already checking the weapon's status and ensuring it was ready for immediate use. Kim's in the perfect position to provide overwatch and sniper support, but he can't see the entire battlefield from there. You're here with me, you've been monitoring all radio traffic, and you understand the complete tactical picture. Morrison paused, to take a careful breath before continuing. Besides, Santos, leadership isn't about rank, it's about making the right decisions when lives are on the line. You've been doing that for years. Before Maria could argue further, Kim's voice crackled through the radio with updated information about the approaching enemy reinforcements. All stations, this is Overwatch. Enemy vehicles are now 1 kilometer out and closing fast. I can see dismounted personnel beginning to deploy from the lead vehicles. The timeline for extraction had just compressed dramatically. Maria realized that debating command structure was a luxury they couldn't afford, with enemy reinforcements so close. Someone needed to coordinate the withdrawal immediately, and Morrison's condition made him unable to perform that function effectively. All right, sir, Maria said, slinging the M4 across her shoulder while maintaining radio contact. I'll get everyone home, but you're staying right here until I can arrange proper medical evacuation for you. Morrison smiled weakly. I'm not going anywhere, Santos. But remember, the mission isn't complete until every soldier is safely extracted. Don't leave anyone behind, including yourself. Maria keyed her radio and took her first action as acting company commander. All stations. This is acting command. Captain Morrison is wounded but stable. I'm assuming tactical control for extraction operations. All teams acknowledge. 210. The responses came back immediately and without question. Fire Team Alpha acknowledges. Fire Team Bravo acknowledges. Overwatch acknowledges. Maria was surprised by how natural their acceptance felt. These soldiers had worked with her for months, had seen her courage under fire, and had watched her save the lives of their wounded comrades. To them, her medical expertise and demonstrated bravery qualified her to lead them out of danger. Alpha, what's your status inside the compound? Maria transmitted while studying the tactical situation around them. Alpha here. We've completed our search and recovered significant intelligence materials. We're prepared to move on your command. End quote. Bravo. Report your position and status. Bravo is maintaining security on the southern approach. We have 3 enemy prisoners secured and ready for transport. We can see dust clouds from approaching vehicles to our north. Maria quickly processed the information while formulating an extraction plan. The approaching enemy reinforcements meant they couldn't use their planned primary extraction route, which would have taken them directly through the area where hostile vehicles were deploying. They needed an alternative plan that would get everyone to safety while avoiding a pitched battle against superior numbers. Overwatch, I need detailed information about terrain features to our west and south. We're going to need an alternate extraction route. Kim's response was immediate and detailed. Copy that, Command. Western route looks viable with good concealment for approximately 2 kilometers. Southern route has better terrain but longer exposure periods. I recommend western approach. Alpha. Consolidate your intelligence materials and prepare to move. Bravo. Secure the prisoners for transport and establish a perimeter around our current position. We're executing immediate extraction via western route. As Maria issued these orders, she realized that command decisions felt more natural than she'd expected. Her medical training had taught her to quickly assess complex situations and prioritize actions based on immediate needs. Military leadership required similar skills, just applied to tactical situations rather than medical emergencies. All stations, enemy reinforcements are deploying approximately 800 meters to our north, Kim reported. I count at least 30 personnel with crew-served weapons. They're establishing a base of fire position that will interdict our primary extraction route. Rever Mound. Maria studied the developing situation while helping Morrison prepare for movement. The enemy reinforcements were positioning themselves exactly where military doctrine would suggest, blocking the most obvious escape route while preparing to advance on the compound. Their tactical competence meant that extracting safely would require careful planning and precise execution. Alpha, I need you to establish a defensive position on the compound's western wall. Bravo, you're going to provide covering fire while Alpha displaces to our location. Once we're consolidated, we'll move together toward the western extraction route. Morrison listened to Maria's orders with obvious approval. Good thinking, Santos. Classic bounding Overwatch technique. Keep them moving and don't let the enemy fix your position. Maria felt a surge of confidence at Morrison's endorsement of her tactical decisions. She'd been unconsciously applying principles she'd learned through observation and experience, trusting her instincts about what would work in their specific situation. Overwatch, can you provide suppressive fire on enemy positions during our movement? Affirmative. Command. I have clear fields of fire on their deployment area. I can keep their heads down during your displacement. Execute movement in 30 seconds. Alpha moves first, Bravo provides cover, then follows. Overwatch maintains suppression throughout. Maria helped Morrison to his feet, supporting most of his weight while keeping her newly acquired M4 ready for immediate use. The captain was weak but mobile, able to move with assistance despite his shoulder wound. Getting him to the extraction point would require careful attention to his physical limitations. Alpha is moving, came the radio call as the first fire team began their displacement from the compound toward Maria's position. She could see them advancing in proper tactical formation, using available cover while maintaining speed. Their movement immediately attracted enemy attention, and automatic weapons fire began impacting around them. Kim's sniper rifle began its methodical work, each shot carefully aimed at enemy positions that were threatening the moving soldiers. Maria could hear the distinctive crack of his precision rifle, punctuated by the heavier sound of crew-served weapons, as the Taliban reinforcements tried to establish fire superiority. Bravo is moving. The second fire team began their displacement as Alpha reached Maria's location. The coordination was flawless, exactly the kind of professional movement that Morrison had drilled into his soldiers through countless training exercises. Enemy fire was intensifying as the Taliban forces realized their quarry was attempting to escape. Bullets snapped through the air around the consolidating American position, forcing everyone to keep low while they prepared for the next phase of their withdrawal. Outstanding movement, all stations, Maria transmitted while ensuring Morrison was properly positioned for their continued extraction. Prepare for displacement to the west. We're moving in 2 minutes. As the teams reorganized themselves, Maria found herself naturally falling into the rhythm of tactical command. She was thinking 3 steps ahead, anticipating problems and formulating solutions before they became critical. Her medical training in triage and emergency response was translating surprisingly well to military leadership. Command, this is Overwatch. Enemy forces are beginning to advance on your position. You've got approximately 5 minutes before they'll be in effective range with their crew-served weapons. Copy that, Overwatch. All stations, we're moving now. Alpha takes point. Bravo provides rear security. I'll move with the command element in the middle of the formation. Maria positioned herself next to Morrison, ready to support him during movement while maintaining her ability to command the extraction. The M4 felt natural in her hands now. Not just a medical tool for self-defense, but a symbol of her responsibility for getting everyone home safely. Alpha is moving to the west, came the radio call, as the lead fire team began the extraction. Their movement was smooth and professional, evidence of the training and confidence Morrison had instilled in his soldiers over months of operations together. Maria and Morrison moved together, the wounded captain leaning heavily on his medic turned acting commander. Despite his injury, Morrison maintained situational awareness, occasionally offering quiet tactical suggestions that helped Maria refine her decisions. Contact rear. Bravo's call indicated that enemy forces were beginning to pursue their withdrawal. The sound of automatic weapons fire erupted behind them as the rear guard engaged targets trying to follow their movement. Overwatch. Can you support Bravo's position? Maria transmitted while continuing to help Morrison move towards safety. Already on it, command. Engaging targets threatening the rear guard. Kim's rifle began its precise work again, each shot designed to disrupt enemy movement and buy time for the extraction to continue. The western route proved to be exactly as Kim had described it, offering good concealment through a series of rocky outcroppings and dried stream beds. The terrain was challenging, especially for Morrison with his shoulder wound, but it provided protection from enemy observation and direct fire. Alpha reports the route ahead is clear for approximately 1 kilometer, came the radio update as the lead element continued their advance. Good concealment and no signs of enemy presence. Maria felt a growing sense of confidence as the extraction progressed smoothly. Her tactical decisions were proving sound. Her soldiers were performing superbly, and they were putting distance between themselves and the enemy reinforcements. The mission that had started so badly was ending successfully. Bravo reports enemy pursuit has been discouraged, came another positive update. Overwatch fires were very effective in disrupting their advance. We're clear to continue extraction. 30 minutes later, Maria heard the distinctive sound of approaching helicopters in the distance. The extraction birds were arriving exactly on schedule, ready to lift the team and their intelligence materials to safety. She felt a surge of relief and pride as she realized they'd accomplished something remarkable. All stations, extraction birds are inbound. Alpha, establish landing zone security. Bravo, maintain perimeter defense. Outstanding work by everyone today. As the helicopters touched down in a swirl of dust and rotor wash, Maria helped Morrison toward the medical evacuation aircraft. The captain's condition had remained stable throughout their movement, testimony to both her medical skills and his remarkable personal courage. Santos, Morrison said as they reached the helicopter, what you did today went far beyond being a combat medic. You saved my life, took command of a complex tactical situation, and brought everyone home safely. That's extraordinary leadership by any standard. Maria helped secure Morrison in the medical helicopter, while the rest of the team loaded onto their transport aircraft. The intelligence materials they'd recovered were safely stowed. The mission objectives had been accomplished. And most importantly, every soldier was returning alive. "I had a good example to follow, sir," Maria replied as the medical team took over Morrison's care. "You taught me that leadership means taking care of soldiers and completing the mission. Today I just did what needed to be done." Morrison smiled as the morphine began taking effect, his pain finally being properly managed by the flight medics. "Santos, you've got the instincts of a natural leader. When I recover, I'm going to recommend you for a commission. The Army needs officers like you." As the helicopters lifted off and carried them toward safety, Maria reflected on the events of the day. She'd started the morning as a combat medic, supporting an assault operation. She was ending it as someone who'd proven capable of tactical command under the most demanding circumstances imaginable. The M4 carbine lay across her lap. No longer just a weapon for personal protection, but a symbol of the responsibility she'd accepted when her commander needed her most. She'd carried Morrison to safety amid gunfire, treated his wounds under combat conditions, and then taken his weapon to finish the operation he'd started. Looking out the helicopter window at the Afghan landscape passing below, Maria realized that her understanding of her own capabilities had fundamentally changed. She was still a combat medic, still dedicated to saving lives and caring for wounded soldiers. But she was also something more. She was a leader who could be trusted with the lives of others when the situation demanded it. The mission was complete, the soldiers were safe, and Maria Santos had proven that courage and competence could overcome any challenge. She'd answered the call when her commander fell, taking up his weapon and his responsibilities without hesitation. In doing so, she'd discovered leadership qualities she'd never known she possessed. As the extraction helicopters flew toward friendly territory, Maria kept the M4 close at hand, understanding now that being a combat medic meant more than just medical training. It meant being ready to do whatever was necessary to bring soldiers home safely. Whether that required bandages and medical supplies, or taking command and leading from the front. The day that had started with a routine assault mission had become something far more significant, a test of character and competence that had revealed the true measure of everyone involved. Maria had passed that test with distinction, proving that heroes aren't defined by their job titles but by their actions when others need them most.